UCT and they're starting from scratch. So if a worker's been working here for 20 years, all of the money that they've accumulated as a worker for GFAS has not come through, or for Supercare has not come through. Not all workers have been insourced. There's about 30 Supercare workers, I think, who cannot be found at all, who've been fired by UCT. There's workers, we're trying to also speak to the issue of workers who were retrenched since the outsourcing process began, and how they've been redressed in that way, have been indicated for, was their settlements given to them. We're speaking about cafeteria workers from Big Chef, who about 37 to 40 have been retrenched. And what Wayne, the owner of the Big Chef company, has done is that he offered them a settlement of, I think, 150 Rand after letting them go. So he's only giving them 150 Rand, that's why they're from their job. So what we're saying is that Wayne must actually take the money that he pays as rent to UCT, and UCT must pay those workers as a retrenchment settlement if Wayne is leaving, because Wayne is supposedly leaving the institution as an owner of cafeteria shops. Those workers must be kept in the future for any cafeterias that open in place of Wayne, and they must get like relevant and sufficient settlement packages should they be retrenched, and not just 150 Rand each will go home. So we're in a process where we're trying to track down all of the workers that UCT has fired throughout the insourcing process. It's difficult, a lot of numbers have changed, we don't have addresses, we're struggling to get information from UCT. But these are like some workers' demands that we're speaking about. There's an extensive list of them, but these are like sort of immediate ones. So it's a struggle, and also we're struggling to consolidate workers' voices, because UCT won't let workers have what we deem as a mass meeting of all workers where they can consolidate their demands and issues. So we've even started petitioning to say UCT must release all workers for a set period of time, where at least they can engage and they can bring forth their issues, and they can speak to how they can consolidate themselves in terms of adding to the TRC process that we envision, and also restructuring the institution at a labor level. So for labor workers, car staff, admin staff, and workers, cleaners, security. We're trying to allow them to have a consolidated voice that is equal and fair, and outside of this framework where we as students and management sort of have a discussion about workers on the basis that we are the mediators between workers and the institution. We want workers to be directly involved in these processes and be considered as valuable stakeholders rather than dispensable objects, or sort of people that you don't really have to talk to, but rather can have someone talking between you and them. So that's the struggle we've been having, and we've been pushing the institution to try and let workers go so that we can consolidate their voice, and we still try to do that.
Okay, so briefly, the fourth question was on the practicalities of ending financial exclusion, and why it hasn't been done if it was committed to last year. So like, I don't know if I want to give you a very flowery answer or a very frank answer. So the frank answer would be, for instance, the issue, let me make an example, the Wayne issue, workers were retrenched, taken away, nothing was going to be done about it. Until during the shutdown, we added it as an immediate demand, and then and only then did UCT say that, hey, Wayne, we're not going to take rent from you. We urge you to take the rent and redistribute it to the workers. Same model you use for the issues we brought up. We brought up issues last year during Roads Must Fall, and what happened is, to take away the protest and go back to class, the university just flowery agreed to things. Yes, we'll do that. We'll end financial exclusion. It never happened because there was no direct threat. Right now, it is possible for them to commit to doing it. And that's why I'm saying I might not be an economist, but if you have the School of Economics commit to say these things are possible and can be done, and then we just have to start the process. UCT will not start the process unless there's actually pressure on UCT. So right now the pressure is the academic project is at stake. That is where you will see the true colors and powers of UCT being able to achieve all these things. And mind you, if all of us had said we're not going back to class until you answer this, UCT is able and capable of doing it, and will do it because the power vested on them and the financial abilities of mobilizing finances from the private sector is there. Max Price himself said, I can mobilize the private sector to give us money if we have to do these things. Should you want us to do these things before we have to scrap out the whole academic year, because we have a lot to lose there. So I think it's a matter of what pressure exists, and should the pressure exist, UCT is then able to move and respond in a positive direction, and our demands are always met every time there's pressure and something at stake for the university to lose.
Thank you. I'm going to take the next round of 4. So I need 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi. I'd like to thank the candidates for offering us this opportunity. Sorry, Laura. Engage. I'd like to thank the candidates for opening up this opportunity to be able to engage in these critical issues. I'm very disappointed as a student because our academics have so much power to convene these meetings, but they have not convened them. But when with students who have no power to convene them, they come and question them, how do you decolonize science? But there's so much you can research online. There's so much stuff people have compiled. I mean, for example, we go in science classes, we research the thermodynamics law. But then how does it apply to South African solutions, to African solutions? In computer science, they develop all these things which are solving European and Western problems. What about African problems? What about a child in Capetown who does not have access to a phone? Like, how are we developing solutions in science to solve African problems? That means decolonizing science. And also acknowledging the violence that science has inflicted on bodies. I mean, in biology, they used to say homosexuality is a mental illness, and then they retracted it, but society still has retained that thing of viewing homosexuals as people who are mentally disturbed, but it's stemming from science. It's going there and saying, in science we wield so much power, and we need to take responsibility of the power that we wield.
It's not so much a question, sort of the same thing, but more to enlighten on what's going on in School of Economics. I went to the meeting on Monday, the meeting on Tuesday, and they chose to come here on the one today. But they have been looking at various policies that have been submitted, not from UCT or to UCT in particular, but rather to the country as a whole. And I think most of the conclusions that came out of that were that obviously taxing the rich was a big component of it. Others advocated for NSFAS to carry on, but to improve in its efficiency. But I think as much as it's feasible, it also doesn't look very possible at the moment with the whole political situation, with Praveen being almost arrested. Unfortunately, it is so sad, but all of this would have to go into the budget for next year, like right now, and I think it's very good timing that Praveen has sort of been taken off as Minister of Finance, and yeah, it just doesn't seem like any of this is going to happen. So I really sympathise, and I really hope that we can find a way forward. But does that mean, like, if this doesn't get into the budget for this year, does that mean, what does that mean for our future?
Thank you. Hand number 3.
I just would like to react on the answer that the lady did regards to decolonization in biology. And the first thing I'd like to say is something was mentioned about the land. And I would like to point out in the Department of Biology, there's actually a unit that is actually dedicated for that purpose. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is decolonizing, I want a better answer with regard. I wasn't satisfied with the answer I was giving about decolonization. With regards to the Faculty of Science, I don't disregard the idea with regards to other faculties, in fact, I might move forward. But with regards to the example that was given about jackass penguins or king penguins, sorry, does that mean that when you're decolonizing, let's say, biology, that you can't use any examples from outside of South Africa? And I would like to also mention, from my personal experience, I'm a foreigner, I'm not from South Africa. I've been in South Africa for 5 years. 5 years in the Department of Biology, I know more about the biology of the South African country, specifically about South Africa. And I do feel that what he said there was wrong, because 90% of the examples that are used to teach biology in the Department of Biology are actually South African examples.
Can I just ask the last question? Paul?
Yes, so basically, a friend and I attended a meeting at the university.
Sorry, can I ask you to project? I can't hear you.
Yeah, all right. So a friend and I attended a meeting at UCO about 2 weeks ago, and this meeting was really dedicated to the inner workings of the TRC itself, how it will be structured and things like that. But at the time, not many details were fleshed out. So I wanted to know if we could have some insight into that, namely the TRC itself, not the ideology, not the philosophy surrounding the TRC, but rather questions with regards to how the TRC will, let's say, guarantee meaningful long-term change and impartiality, and who will chair the committees and things like that. There are practical questions surrounding how to set up the TRC and not the philosophy surrounding the TRC itself.
Okay. I'm going to allow for responses and then we'll take the next round.
Okay, so can I respond to your submissions, because I wanted to directly respond. I was actually thinking about this coming here because I thought that it was going to be one of the coming questions. How do we even start to decolonize science? Because science is true because it is science, and you know, what can you do? And my response to that was, if I personally were committed to enforcing decolonization, science as a whole is a product of Western modernity, and the whole thing should be scratched off, especially in Africa. So if you want practical solutions to how to decolonize science, we'd have to restart science from, I don't know, an African perspective, from our perspective of how we've experienced science. For instance, I had a question for all the science people. Is there's a place in KZN, in Mkabialingana, and they believe that through the magic, the black magic, you call it black magic, they call it witchcraft, others, that you are able to send a lightning to strike someone. So can you explain that scientifically? Because it is something that happens
I need to address you directly. When we started this, we agreed on certain house rules.
Okay.
And by you doing that, you're disrespecting the sacredness of the space. And so I'd like to ask you to first please apologize to the panel directly. And then number two, understand the rules that we went by in this space. Because it's going to be very problematic. When we started, this is not an antagonizing space. And so what you're trying to do is collapse the space and make it antagonizing, which we will not allow. This is a progressive space for people to say their opinions. And we have noted how those opinions are going to be laid out. So I would like you to first apologize and then go on and agree to abiding by the rules of the space. Otherwise, I would, if you're not willing to do that, I'd please ask you to remove yourself from the space. But those are the rules of engagement of the space.
Okay, I'm very sorry to the panel.
Okay, and you agree to abide by the rules of the space. Thank you. Please carry on.
So I will finish. See, that very response is the reason why I am not in the science faculty. I did science throughout my high school years, and there was a lot of things that I just, but it's fine. But Western modernity is the direct antagonistic factor to decolonization, because Western knowledge is totalizing. It is saying that it was Newton and only Newton who knew or saw an apple falling, and then out of nowhere decided that gravity existed and created an equation, and that is it. For whether people knew Newton or not, or whether whatever happens in Western Africa, Northern Africa, the thing is, the only way to explain gravity is through Newton, who sat under a tree and saw an apple fall. So Western modernity is the problem that decolonization directly deals with, to say that we are going to decolonize by having knowledge that is produced by us, that speaks to us, and that is able to accommodate knowledge from our perspective. So if you're saying that you disagree with her approach, it means that you are vested in the Western and Eurocentric way of understanding, which means you yourself still need to go back internally, decolonize your mind, come back and say, how can I re-look at what I've been studying all these years? Because Western knowledge is very pathetic, to say the least. I, from a decolonized perspective, believe we can do more as new knowledge producers, as people who are given the ability to reason, or whatever is that people say we do when we think or rationalize. So decolonizing the science would mean doing away with it entirely and starting all over again to deal with how we respond to the environment and how we understand it. Thank you.
Okay, I have a response to it.
So I'm going to speak on the practicalities of the TRC as well as the website. What we had envisioned the TRC to look like, and the institutional review sense, and also the engagement with students provided. There'd be three commissioners. I'm not going to say the commissioners' names because I like to give them. It wouldn't be proper to say that. We considered there was a short list of seven names for commissioners, which the institution contributed to, and as well as students and workers we contributed to. We'd shortlist that to 3, and then they would sit over a process where there's demands from students, there's demands from workers, there's demands from academics, there's insight from alumni, there's insight from different faculties and the Vice Chancellor in particular, the institution in particular, council, ourselves as people who've been leading the protest. And those demands would be put in submission form, whereas the commissioners would look at them and have to process that would last around 2 weeks, where at a daily basis, like there'd be public engagements and witnesses and sort of interrogations of submissions that come in demand form, where we'd interrogate how we could construct these tangible solutions to the demands that exist, and timelines and timeframes would be set by commissioners who are independent of the process, independent from students and stakeholders and the institution itself. They'd be the ones who develop timeframes and would be binding beyond council's power. They'd set timeframes and solutions and recommendations and resolutions that would be binding with reference to all of the various stakeholders. So I don't know if that's still philosophical, but I think it's very practical in terms of how the demands will be submitted and engaged with on a daily basis. And then I think what would be viewed as the core part or the initial stage of the TRC would be submissions by those who've been interdicted and suspended and expelled. After those processes have been lifted and demolished, they'd make submissions as to why they did what they did, how the institution inflicted violence upon them, and how violence that existed on campus was in response to institutional and structural violence. And then at the commissioner's discretion, there'd be a restructuring of the disciplinary processes that exist in TUCT, and those would be framed in a sense that would consider political instability on the campus. So that the disciplinary processes that exist currently would be restructured to suit political instability and to speak to the lived experiences of Black people and to speak to how institutional violence antagonizes certain responses. So there'd be that stage-by-stage framing on a daily basis that interrogates all of the demands and resolutions that come from students and stakeholders in the institution. And the resolutions and timeframes will be set by commissioners. I don't know if that helps.
I'll take up to the next round of questions and then open up to the WhatsApp questions. So I'll 1, 2, 3, 4. So, and then the WhatsApp questions. So number 1, please.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for this question. I think just going back to the question of decolonization and how do you decolonize science. So when Snow was spoken about, so I'm from the sociology department, and this question came up, and people said, what is pre-decolonial education? And my response was, I don't know what it is, because I think that it's a very complicated question, but I think it's just the commitment to finding out. The fact that we can sit, and I think for me, science is a very, so I'm not going to try and declaim what science is not, but it's very essentialist and foundationalist. The fact that you can sit and rebuke the fact that maybe there is no rich crop, there is no this, there is no ancestors, that's my whole belief. And I think the very essentialist and very foundationalist kind of aspects that we have towards things, the fact that science is absolute and it can't be questioned. We're not saying debunk it, but we're saying just start to interrogate particular things. I can't say what the science faculty can do, but that's what you guys are playing. You guys are scientists, you guys know the faculty. Surely you can't be asking people who are not maybe specific what you can do. I think that you guys can figure out those questions. It's just the commitment to trying to figure out. It's the commitment to question. It's the commitment that I can come as a Black person and speak about the beliefs that you guys may not think can be scientifically expressed. It's able to have that space. You accommodate people's beliefs. Because things like, I don't want to call it witchcraft, because that in itself is problematic. Things like that are a very big part of my life. I'm also still very violent, but that's part of my life. And the fact that I come to a space where we learn about science and all of a sudden our beliefs are the non-existent. And I think that's what people speak to, the fact that science has been used as a very oppressive device. So it's how do we get to a place where as scientists you guys don't you produce the same things. And I don't think anyone's coming here with answers. We all don't have answers. Like we're 23, 22 years old. We don't know what these certain things are. But it's a commitment to finding out so that we don't reproduce the same oppression. So that in a few generations, another culture, another race doesn't come into the space and feel like their whole existence, because it can't be explained by formula or what, the whole existence doesn't exist. So I mean, we took the stance in the sociology department, but we don't know. We can't tell you what we mean by decolonization because it's a process. We need to sit and then discuss what we actually need. What is actually free education? Because people still need to eat, people still need to travel, but it's the commitment to doing things. And I think we want to sit there and have someone have a whole full plan and then we can agree. But can we not agree? Can we not have faith in the fact that this is something that we can produce? It's going to take a lot of years. Free education, and I've never heard any of the processes saying that free education is going to happen tomorrow. These are very students, amazing, brilliant people. They know that it's not going to come tomorrow. So I feel like also we need to change our attitudes of being antagonistic and not being realistic. These are brilliant students. They're also going to qualify to see it. They understand the practicalities. So can we also not come with problems, we come with solutions. It's just the commitment. That's why commitment for it is the commitment for progress.
Thank you. Number two. Was it?
I don't know if it was me, but they look stupid anyways. Just on speaking on decolonializing science. So I'm the middle, that's my baby sister. My older sister is an outreach astronomer at the SAO, but before that she did a tertiary education at UCT. She started here in 2003. By the time that she reached her third year, so there were 2 girls, there were 10 people in the class, 8 white males, 2 people of color, her and 1 other colored girl from Paul, who had to travel 4 hours here and back every day from Paul. There were only 2 people of color in the honors class as well, and she is the first quote-unquote black, I guess, you know, technically black. I don't know if it's with a big P or the small P, I don't know. Persons who work on the SKA, postdoc who work on the SKA, and people keep thinking like, why is this girl, I keep getting interviewed and stuff. It's because she's literally the only one. There is no one else like that. It's not because, I'm not saying she's not special, but that in and of itself is a problem. And she actually gave she gave several interviews that are available on SoundCloud. I can also even share it on the G Drive. And one of them was specifically on decolonializing astronomy, because that's where she works in. I don't know if anybody knows, but the astronomy textbooks that they give people, or that we prescribe in S1000 or S3000, are made for the Northern Hemisphere. So you literally have to turn it upside down. So when you are sitting in your, at home in a different province, and you look up at the sky, that is not what you see when you get here. So, you have dreams of figuring out, I really want to know what happens in the sky, why do start, shit that you ask yourself before you come, sorry, things that you ask yourself. And you want to get the answers, but when you get here, the book doesn't reflect your reality. That's one practical way in which we can change it. The second thing is that specific textbook, in the space of 1 year, the price doubled because of, I don't know what happened, but then a financial barrier was created where people who couldn't afford the textbooks didn't go into that stream, because astronomy is a very specific stream, and then they had to choose cheaper options because those textbooks were cheaper to buy. People who could afford the astronomy textbooks were able to continue and go into that stream. So there are practical ways to decolonialize science, but one in particular is textbooks. First years are so scared about the edition of the textbook that they buy. When you try to sell second-hand textbook, they're like, no, but my teacher said we have to have this because of the page numbers and blah, blah, blah. There's an index. You can go look for the index. The facts in science aren't changing that. That rapidly, that we need to tell people that you have to have the latest edition that costs 2,000 Rand instead of buying a second-hand one for 200 Rand. It's that fear that keeps, that they indoctrinate the first years with, because they come here knowing nothing. But sorry, I'm not trying to be angry or anything, but that's a practical way. I know that people like to say you can't decolonialize science because it's a fact-based subject, but those are some of my facts.
Apologies. A few of us, I think, need to excuse ourselves. One of our colleagues has just been arrested here at Randebosch Police Station right now. It's Mascolemland, so we need to move, because it's going to be very difficult to maintain composure in the space while we're worried about that. So I think, thank you for this process. Hopefully we can do it again in a more constructive and a manner where we can end on a positive note, but we need to run at the moment. But apologies.
still willing to stay. There's some who are still willing to stay for 10 minutes, so we'll take a few questions and then we'll see what.
We still have, sorry, hands 3 and 4.
Just before we continue, we can propose, if you guys would like to continue the space for another hour in order to discuss as a group and not so much questions to the chairs, then yeah, we can do that. Or if we would like to close at the proposed time, which was 3 o'clock, which is 15 minutes, so it would be after we finish Q&A with the SRC candidates. Yeah, think about it and we'll vote on it in 10 minutes.
Yeah. 3.
Okay, just a comment and then also a question. The comment would be, maybe just as a personal realization, but probably, my opinion probably isn't going to shape national policy. But the way I view that opinion can very well shape the relationships that I do have. I don't know how we engage and have heated, deep discussions and also respect each other. And I don't know how to do that. And I've said some things over the last couple of weeks that I've gone, oh, can I take it back? And I apologize. I don't think I've said it directly to anybody, but there's some people that I have disrespected and I didn't mean it. I didn't know some of the things that I know now. And then a question, in 2012, a document was drafted, a commission was set up to look at the issue of free education, and a report was issued. And I'm just wondering, has the collaborative read that report, and what are their feelings on some of the recommendations made in that report?
Yes.
So I just want to talk about the whole decolonization thing a little bit. So I feel that the experience I've had in biology, I'm a biology student, is that as a whole, the Southern Hemisphere is quite at disadvantage in terms of the amount of research that's been done in the Southern Hemisphere as a whole. So I think we also just need to remember that it affects our country a lot, and it also affects the Southern Hemisphere. And I think that is something we need to try and look at as a practical way of saying, all this research has been done in the Northern Hemisphere, so yes, we can learn about that. But if we want to tackle issues in our own back garden, in the oceans here, in the savannas in South Africa, we need to look at putting more into research in the Southern Hemisphere. But I have a slight concern in that I've worked on a few volunteer projects in conservation with animals, and they rely heavily on international donors to get the funding they need to do that research for the Southern Hemisphere. My concern would be in a very radical change to the way we conduct science. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but if you have a very radical change, that process that we follow, you run the risk of it not being relatable to international forums where a lot of good work is done, like CITES and such. So that's my only concern, and I wondered if anyone else had an opinion on how we could tackle that issue, because you want to maintain that ability to cross borders, because science is it can cross borders, so we need to try and maintain that and assure us so that we just don't lose that option of accessing other mines, other funding opportunities for conservation, other that, but still maintaining the focus on making sure we focus on the Southern Hemisphere. So,
Thank you. Sorry, you were noted as number 2.
I've got a question that's a little bit depressing. So basically the two bodies that we have to deal with are UCT and government. So UCT is going to have to get funding from the private sector and government in order to make free fees a reality. So I don't really, to be honest, I don't think the corporate sector gives 2 fucks about equal decolonized education. But so that means you're going to have to rely on government for that extra money. But both these bodies, UCT management and the national government, both in my, well, not in my mind, actually facts speak for themselves, have shown a lack of willingness to engage, UCT management level of duplicitousness that I find disgusting. And so where are we stuck with these two the one solution, one partial solution would be for UCT to actually get behind students and protest and bring this to government, but that's failed. they're not doing that. So basically these two bodies on the lower level closer to home, UCT, and further out government, we're dealing with people who haven't exhibited any sort of good faith tendency or made overtures to actually engage. I mean, right now they're having a meeting on fees must fall issue without the Minister of Finance for a financial issue, which shows government's bullshit. So where are we stuck with, you know, two organizations or bodies we've got to deal with are basically full of shit?
I just like to note the WhatsApp questions first, and then I'll open it up to the final rounds of questions and then the final answers from comments. They need to really get going.
How many questions do you like? 3. So the first is there a response from the Sheffield TRC about the makeup of the government interministerial task team on the higher education crisis? So for example, just a comment on the absence of the finance minister and the presence of the minister of police, correctional services and military. And then the other one was, so how can we make the black bodies feel comfortable and acknowledged within the science faculty to foster black academics, especially in the science, technology, engineering, and the mathematics fields? And then the third one was, I'm going to try and reword it, but how do you justify using violence to achieve equality? And if so, where do you draw the line?
Thank you.
So can I answer the related questions and you answer the one specific to the science one? So there was one about the document that was drafted, and the one about the government, university and whatnot, and the one about the task team. So I'm going to be very brutally honest, and I've received a lot of backlash on how honest I tend to be about these things. So we have the political question and the practical question, right? I'll deal with that in the second part of my answer. The first answer is, I personally believe, without a shadow of doubt, and everybody who's in the movement for Fees Must Fall, that we're fighting for a genuine cause. People have been financially excluded. People from our townships cannot access higher learning education because they cannot afford it. Monetarily, it has been a barrier for black bodies to access the university space, tertiary education, to succeed in life and so forth. But we come and we attack or we attend to power directly. That is why your government is saying there is a third force. So instead of directly engaging with the fact that we know that there are documents that exist that say it was attainable and there are recommendations, we don't want to go and say we're attacking the ANC government. We are students saying we want free education from the one who has the power to decide. Let them make a commitment. So that is to mean, let them pretend that the document, the commitment that was made prior to 2012 does not exist, and come and say, as people who are calling for a legitimate call, we are going to commit to doing this and make new recommendations which already exist. So what we're trying to do is to avoid directly attending to, I cannot go in a regalia or go against a regalia and say I'm attacking the ANC government, because that's where force and police brutality is used. Because, I mean, regime change, I don't think it's a politically correct thing to call for, but then if the government is phrasing it that way, what we do is we go back to basics. We say, we just want free, decolonized education. Who can give us that? The universities have played an active role in suppressing this. That is why we're saying we're going to deal with the internal questions. I don't want to be shot by Habib's bouncers and Max Price's police friends before I even get too much to Parliament. What we're saying is, if universities say it is not our problem, why did Max Price feel the need for him to establish an 8% subsidy, 1% of the rich thing, when he is not the one who can make the mandate to call for free education? What Max Price was meant to say is say, in their council with Habibs and everything, as vice chancellors, we endorse what the students are calling for. Higher education. How are you going to commit to giving us free education? That is where every, contradiction that exists in this country will be exposed. Because currently we have so much of inequalities and so much of problems stemming from 1994 that have not been dealt with. But I can't come here and say Zuma must fall, corruption must fall. I necessarily don't have the power. The only power I have is to mobilize everyone here to say the least we could do is speak on issues that we understand, that we are directly affected by saying we want free education and we want a commitment now. And we want to see timelines of how we're going to implement it, and then we'll move on to next issues as politicians. I'm not a politician, I'm a student, I want to study, but I cannot afford it, so I want free education. So that is the one answer. The second answer was on how you justify violence. What is very interesting is there are political questions and then there are very practical questions. Practically, the only way to get management to sit in a room with us and discuss these things and meet our demands is if there is any pressure. I have not been involved in any violence, whatever, but I've been committed to the process. I know that I have to shut down in order for Max to do it. Another thing that people fail to understand and analyze with violence is institutional violence is not considered violence. They are the first movers who violate it. For instance, all the symbols on campus that continue to worship and continue to enforce white supremacy and white monopoly, and God knows the racist men who have survived on the blood and the death and the toiling of blacks are put up there on pedestals. That is violence towards me. The day I decide to take that painting that I've been crying about from March in 2015 and burn it, that is when I'm seeing as violence. But nobody has called out Max Price for, after being told to take down all symbols on campus that violate black bodies, it's not seen as violence. So let us not be partial about how we understand violence, or let us open debates and platforms where you actually teach yourself and knowledge yourself on how my response cannot be seen as violence when the first response is not seen as violence. And I don't even have the power to force Max Price to do anything unless I say to him, what is at threat, what is at risk, what are you going to be willing to give in order for your institution to continue to flourish, because I also want to flourish. So on violence, I've never beaten anyone for the sake of this movement. We've not in plenaries discussed that. There's no discussion where we plan on which building we're going to torch. We've never torched a building according to my knowledge. Whatever has happened, has happened. And unless it comes from a statement or from plenary from us saying, we want to burn in order for free education to come, then I can answer that question. But if any of our formal sittings have not resolved on that, then it is not us, but then it is a manifestation of the anger that has been perpetuated and, suppressed by white power and white ignorance and the blatant ignorance of the things that need to be attended to with immediate effect.
Thank you. I'm going to call for the last round of questions. We'll do that, but I just want to call for the last round of questions and then the final answers. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I'm into the order. So number 1, please. Please can you stand?
I just wanted to address the whole thing, of decolonizing education and decolonizing the science faculty. I feel like, someone said earlier on, that even if we do not know, we can try. I feel like science faculty does not try. Bio is a very, very exclusive course. There are very few black students in the department, and you are made to feel like you do not belong. Black students are seen as inferior than or less knowledgeable than. When your group members all decide to check your work repeatedly, but do not check each other's work, what does that say to you as a black student? Can we just discuss that? So I feel like the bio department, or let me just say science in general, there's many things they can do beyond changing the curriculum in here so that can make spaces more inclusive. What does it mean when I'm a bit nervous. What does it mean when I'm in class and I'm trying to speak or answer a question and I'm being told to speak well, but English is not my first language? What does that mean? There are things that you can do as a department or as a faculty to make spaces more open for black students without even having to do.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Thandani Mlambo. I finished my BSc in 2012 and I'm doing medicine and health sciences here at GCT. And throughout my undergrad here in the Faculty of Science, looking back, I can say that the curriculum is absolutely colonized. I mean, you don't have an Afrocentric way of looking at things. And I think science was a great starting point for me, and because it really opens you up to questioning a lot, right? We ask a lot of questions. But the problem is that our answers are very Eurocentric. And that's where the problem is. So you'll ask about lightning, and someone will give you the different negative and positive and all sorts of things, and then you'll accept that. But for someone else, lightning is a weapon, as was said, or lightning can be sent and so forth. And for you to accept that using a Eurocentric view is very difficult. And I think it's actually also very, how can I put it, So we accept things in science that have gone through test tubes and through laboratories and so forth, but we neglect that they originate from the African soil. For example, how many chemicals do we use that come from plants which our grandmothers know that this one will kill you, okay? But up until you take it into a test tube and you heat it up and you say, no, actually this has got a potency, this is a very, very poisonous plant. You get what I'm saying? And there are also ways of like our farming. A lot of the farming that is now, it's now being commercialized. But we know when to farm what type of crop. We know what crop doesn't grow in this type of soil. And we can tell by the color of the soil. You know, obviously now I've forgotten because I haven't been back home in a while, but you can tell by the color of the soil I mean, I've seen, to be honest, I've seen my grandfather actually tasting soils and saying, okay, you know what, I'm not saying that he can break it down chemically, but the point is, there is some knowledge that we possess, but because you cannot quantify it, you're going to take it into a test tube, you know, and calculate it. And one of the greatest discoveries as I end off, I think for me, was learning about the dog, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly, in Mali, but how they use the stars and how they could navigate in different terrains. And even here in Southern Africa, we've got so many nomadic people that use the stars and use the moons. But because they couldn't, you know, position the Earth in the same way or write down Galileo's equation, we nullify that because they cannot answer in the Eurocentric way that we are looking for the answers for. So I think that we need to change. I miss science though.
Okay, so the first question I have is relating to the financial exclusion, particularly of students that weren't allowed back or aren't given their degrees because they haven't fully paid off their student debt. And I can 100% get behind the idea that if you've written those tests and you have as an individual passed that, you deserve that degree. That I'm 100% behind, but at the same time that I say that, I can also recognize the university in the same way it was mentioned earlier that the only leverage the protesters have is to have the university shut down. I can recognize that a university doesn't have much leverage to get money out of students if they've already given the degree. So in terms of a shorthand or a short-term solution to that, has anything been put forward by the Shackville TRC as to how to address the fact that the university, as it currently stands, needs to obtain money in one manner, and if they're going to give out degrees without receiving money for it, then where does the institution draw the line as to how much it can allow, how much debt it can allow people to incur and still give away the degrees? And they kind of extrapolates, well, if they're going to then take up the full cost, then that's essentially what will be our free education, and which would be a great thing to achieve, but that's obviously going to require government input. And so has there been like a form of constructed timeline suggested for the varsity? And then finally, I just a comment rather than a question that arose out of a conversation I was having with someone else. The whole idea of decolonialization is to some extent a bit destructive as opposed to constructive. So on one level, it's just semantics, I suppose, but they put forward the idea of instead of hashtag decolonializing UCT, to have a hashtag Africanize UCT. So it's like a bit more, I would like to think, constructive and progressive, and rather than going back on something, to rather go forward on something African. So I was just thinking that could be an idea if people want to adopt that as a way to go forward.
I'd just like to say that, first of all, when we say, I think one thing we need to remember, when you say decolonize, I think we need to understand that, as you say, it's deconstructive, it's a breakdown. I think it's a breakdown of this white idea, so it's more inclusive to everyone else. So when we say that we're breaking down, we need to break down these ideas and thoughts, you know, and bring up ideas and thoughts that put importance on the black person as well, on the black body as well, right? And by doing that, we could do that. For example, this is an example. So what could happen is that even the questioning of questions or assignments, it could place importance on black bodies or black companies or black pharmaceuticals that could be put in that, so that a black person who's writing that test or doing that assignment can realize, hey, I can actually see myself in this light, right? Because you must understand that black bodies at the end of the day, we here for 3 years, right? 4th year sharp, right? And we've already accumulated this debt for so long. And going further than this, we're still accumulating debt to try and become these professors who are actually referred to as well, right? So this whole fees must fall thing is also a decolonization idea, so that we can educate, you know, the people to a certain extent where black bodies and black minds can aspire to go to. Because I remember back being in high school, I was like, become a professor. Nah, fam, I need to get my degree, and work, right? And that whole idea of doing masters was not feasible, right? So by decolonizing, we need to break down these systems and put examples in the curriculum, right? That are able to shine light on black bodies being able to achieve such things that are not necessarily out there yet as much.
So I think we're struggling a lot as science to figure out these practical solutions to decolonize science. But like, I mean, I'm a physics student, and we like to think that science is perfectly objective, and it's all perfect, and everything always works, because things usually work. I mean, that's what science does. But we need to also acknowledge that scientists are not objective. We all are subjective. And that science doesn't happen in a vacuum. Even though we're doing our research, it has an impact on something. And we need to keep that in mind. And like, I know we're not engineers. We're not going to go and teach you how to build something. We're going to just study why it works. But we do need to look at our science, look at our methods, and look at where our knowledge comes from. And like, I mean, how much of scientific knowledge was stolen from other parts of the world and created as Western? So much of it. I mean, mathematics is riddled those examples. And like, we also need to remember that a lot of indigenous knowledge from indigenous people was just blankly ignored by Western arrogance. Like, oh no, these people, these savages, they don't know what's going on. We're Western, we know what science is. We need to get rid of that idea. And like, we don't need to throw away the scientific method, guys. It works. But we do need to look at our curriculum, where our knowledge is coming from, and how we go about doing science and what these impacts are. We really need to consider those things. And I know it is difficult, but we're scientists. We can educate ourselves on these things. We can listen to people from the other side of campus, actually listen and try to understand. Not just, they don't know what they're talking about, I'm just going to concentrate on my really, really smart science stuff. Guys, I'm a physics student, I know that attitude. And it is difficult, but we can do it. And I think what would really help is if we had commitment from the faculty and from our individual departments to say, okay, we're going to look at our curriculum, we're going to go through it, first year, second year, third year, we want your impact, we want your opinion as students, what you find could be better, how can we improve that? We want at least some kind of commitment that they're going to do something that's going to help us foster decolonization. So that yes, nobody has the answers yet. That's why we're having these sessions that we need to learn. But if we could get some kind of commitment that, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to try, that would really make a huge difference.
I'm going to ask Nikki to say the last statement, because people have to go. Yeah, so it's going to be, sorry, those are the last time. But we're going to close officially and then allow for the open discussion to carry on. It's just that people need to get going to the polling station. So, statement.
So thank you very much for having this, because for some faculties this hasn't happened. And there are a lot more questions that I think we could not have covered here today. And I'd like to plead from an activist